The Speaker of the House resigned over this, but was somebody else actually responsible for inviting the Waffen SS soldier? Justin Trudeau giving his half-assed apology, horrible apology today in the House of Commons. What do you even say to this? Include everybody in your apology? Take it away, Justin Trudeau.
On behalf of all of us in this House, I would like to present unreserved apologies for what took place on Friday, and to President Zelensky and the Ukrainian delegation for the position they were put in. For all of us who were present to have unknowingly recognized this individual was a terrible mistake and a violation of the memory of those who suffered grievously at the hands of the Nazi regime.
Yeah, whatever. Terrible apology. If you thought you were going to get anything better out of the Prime Minister of Canada, you would have been sorely mistaken. That's what he got. A lot of people were saying he was going to resign over this. Yeah, no sign of that. No sign of that whatsoever. Deeply embarrassing for all of Canada now, especially with the Prime Minister not even taking responsibility for this. Obviously, Pierre Poilievre, opposition leader, raising his concerns over why he's not taking responsibility for this. Either he knew about it ahead of time, which he denies, or the PMO was in dereliction of their duty to vet every person that came in, especially in a time where a world leader, a controversial world leader, was there in their presence. That is definitely the responsibility of the PMO. But this is going along with this whole story. Now, the word got out about this guy, and now Poland is seeking to extradite him. Rupa Subramania reports here on Twitter saying Poland is seeking extradite the 98-year-old Yaroslav Hanka, who fought in the Waffen SS on behalf of the Nazis, to face trial in Poland for war crimes. Hanka was given standing ovation in the House of Commons just a few days ago as a Canadian and Ukrainian war hero for fighting against the Russians in World War II. Yeah, this is the Trudeau government. This is what we're knowing to expect. But none were more happy in that applause than one particular individual here in our House of Parliament, and that is Chrystia Freeland, the Deputy Prime Minister. Ezra Levant saying here, find someone who looks at you as lovingly as Chrystia Freeland looks at a Nazi SS veteran. Other people commenting on this image as well. Freeland knew, says Word Warrior. She majored in history and Russian literature. She is connected with the Ukrainian Congress of Canada. Look at her grin. Was it intentional? Did she believe she could slide a Nazi soldier into the House of Commons and no one would even notice? I'm actually tending to start believe this narrative. Actually, it seems the most likely, and we're going to get into that as we move on in this video. Now, this is a photograph of Chrystia Freeland when the war actually started. She went out and she met with people. And here she is holding a banner that says, it translated, blood and soil. She subsequently deleted the tweet, re-uploaded with a picture of her at the same event, but not holding that blood and soil insignia. Now, for those that don't know, that phrase actually originates from Nazi Germany. Blood and soil. It was later picked up by Banderas. These are people who believe in basically the same stuff as the Nazis at that time that reside in Ukraine. And this is a contested thing. People are going to say that this is Russian propaganda. No, these are actual facts of what's happening here in Canada. And this is what I'm talking about here. It's not a Photoshop or anything like that. It was posted to her Twitter. Now, Andy Lee has been digging and getting some really interesting stuff. It turns out Chrystia Freeland says Nia on Twitter. Turns out Chrystia Freeland is well aware of her Nazi guest in the House of Commons. In fact, she heard how great the Nazis were her entire life. post from 2021 says her grandfather volunteered to be a Nazi in the same division, and her uncle gave lectures of their greatness. Now, I'm going to get into this tweet thread momentarily, but this is not new news. This is actually quite old news, and this has been reported from some big publications. Here is an excerpt from 60 Minutes back in February 2nd of 1997, Canada's Dark Secret.
Well, now comes Canada's dark secret. That Canada's government apparently welcomed thousands of Nazi war criminals into Canada at war's end, where they have lived comfortably and peacefully ever since. And only now has Canada begun to acknowledge its complicity and its shame. The traditional cold calm of Canada has been shaken by, of all things, a meddling American, an unorthodox private detective from Brooklyn named Stephen Rumbaugh. For 2 years, mostly at his own expense, he has been tracking down Canada's alleged war criminals after getting their names from the Simon Wiesenthal Center in Jerusalem.
Now, long story short, I'm going to leave a link in the description down below. You can watch this whole thing, and I recommend everyone go watch this this whole segment. It's very educational, and these are some of the things that we ought to know. This is about our history and things that have taken place between World War, our involvement, and immigration, and the people who live in our country. Now, here's another excerpt from it, and then we're going to get on to some of the context in Canada.
After World War II came the Cold War, and Canada was worried about communists. The Nazis had fought the communists, so Nazis, even war criminals apparently, had an easy time emigrating to Canada. This, according to Canada's York University history professor, Irving Abella.
We know that one of the ways of getting into the country of Canada during this period was by showing the SS tattoo. This proved that you were an anti-communist.
And what was the chore of the SS?
The SS was obviously charged with the responsibility of murdering Jews. So there was no question that these were war criminals.
Bernard Farmer, director of the Canadian Jewish Congress, says once the killers made it to Canada, the government, in effect, let them live there happily ever after.
Yeah, and this is really, really sad. Now, they did try to go after several of them, but only of the hundreds of SS that were introduced into Canada, only a handful of them have ever been extradited or prosecuted for their crimes in the Second World War. And this is a nasty blight on our past, and now it's coming out, and I'm kind of glad that this is coming out now, because we need to move past this. We need to air this out in the open. Now, Chrystias Freeland's granddad was indeed a Nazi collaborator, so much for Russian disinformation. This is Ottawa Citizen. This was published back in 2017. This is not new. Obviously, she doesn't even look the same. I don't know what happened to her. Maybe she canceling her Disney Plus, she was able to get a better diet. Jokes aside, what are the sources for the information that Freeland's grandfather worked for the Nazis? For starters, the Ukraine archival records held by the province of Alberta. It was the whole file on Chomiak, I don't know how you pronounce that, including his own details about his daily editing of the newspaper, the Krakivsky Vesti. Chomiak noted he edited the paper first in Krakow, Poland, and then in Vienna. Then the rest, the reason he edited the paper in Vienna was because he had to flee with the Nazis, with the Nazi colleagues, and the Russians, or as the Russians advanced into Poland. Russians tended to execute collaborators as well as SS members. Now, this is going to in 1943 and 1944, both another paper and the paper that he edited for hailed the German-approved information of the 14th Waffen-SS Division, composed of Ukrainian volunteers. Yeah, one of those volunteers was just honored in our House of Commons, and this is the connections get even deeper. It's crazy. They called her feisty and badass, says this article that goes in some Substack, and this is going back to 1989, documenting an article that was written in the Edmonton journal that was praising or talking about the story of Chrystia Freeland and how she had trouble over in Russia as a student. Chrystia Freeland, thrilled to be back in Edmonton after an incident with the with the Soviet authorities. The Soviet newspaper vilified the Harvard University scholarship student as an anti-Soviet bourgeois nationalist. Soviet authorities also complained to the Canadian embassy in Moscow that Freeland, who was 20 at the time, was a well-known troublemaker. Now, they don't get into much of the details of why she was seen as a well-known troublemaker, but I mean, just kind of get some of the details. I mean, you can elaborate for yourself, or you can look into some of this other stuff that has been said here. Now, going on with Andy Lee's thread here, here's the obituary confirming the familial connection to Chrystia Freeland. So yes, it appears that her uncle gave a whitewashing lecture on the Galicia division honored in the House of Commons, also known as the 14th Waffen Grenadier Division of the SS of the Nazi Party. Again, this thread goes really deep, so some of these posts are quite lengthy. I'll leave a link in the description. Please go check it out for yourself. So if I'm getting this correct, Chrystia's mother was Helena Komiak. Her mother's sister, Freeland's aunt, was Natalka Komiak, who married Marislav. I don't even know how to pronounce any of this stuff, so I'm just going to gloss over this, making him her uncle. So Chrystia's uncle's father evidently served in the Waffen SF that received the standing ovation. So these are directly related to a sitting member of our parliament, and Morislav's daughter is Alexandra, not going to pronounce that, member of the Ukrainian Canadian Congress, who is organizing protests and rallies and lobbying the government of Canada to send more humanitarian aid and weapons to Ukraine. So this is where it goes less about the guilt of the father into actual ties to what she's doing and some of her other relatives are doing with her. So it appears the main groups backing assistance for Ukraine is run by Chrystia Freeland's cousin by marriage. Am I getting this right here? Her uncle's daughter? And so then, stay with me. Chrystia Freeland's uncle and cousin by marriage helped run the Oserodok Ukrainian Cultural and Educational Center in Winnipeg that receives federal funding, correct? And all the receipts are here. All the evidence that she's gathering is right here. According to this archive, Chrystia Freeland's uncle, Moroslav, was fathered by Boris, a soldier of the Ukrainian Galicia division. So it looks like one of her distant relatives served in the Nazi Party's Waffen SS division. And thank you to Christian Bexty for finding the post confirming that indeed Chrystia Freeland, this is Chrystia Freeland's uncle. And thank you to Blue Bells Forest for finding the important piece Haroslav's Hunka's donates to the Ukraine. So the Nazi that they had in the House of Parliament donates to the Ukrainian Canadian Congress run by Chrystia Freeland's cousin, Alexandria. And this is why he was invited, or is this why he was invited to Parliament? And so I posed as a question, obviously. This is interesting as well. When allegations come out about Chrystia Freeland's familial ties to Nazis, the Ukrainian Canadian Congress dismissed them for her, calling them fake news, saying that they were Russian-backed disinformation. Of course, they weren't, though. This is where we are, and a CBC article linking to the data that Andy Lee is pulling out here. Andy Lee, obviously, doing a fantastic bang-up job showing that a lot of this is the truth, and this is what's happening. Now, look where it was hosted and who is sponsored. This is more information that's coming out. Chrystia Freeland, Eastern Europe Bureau Chief based in Moscow, Financial Times of London. The Empire Strikes Back, the rising tide of nationalism in Russia and its implications for Ukraine and the West. This dates back to 1995. Wow. So this has been a long time in the making. Marty up north saying Chrystia Freeland is a Ukrainian Nazi who is continuing a centuries-old war against Russia, her family's arch enemy. It's a family tradition. Once you accept this, everything she's done in the last few years makes perfect sense. Thanks to Clyde for helping me see this clearly. And this was after the conversation that we had that I posted this morning. Marty and I got into talking about this, and this is where we got into this conversation, and it goes even deeper than this. And I just wanted to put this out there as a publication because this is really, really, really concerning for Canada, and this is our country. What is going on in our country? I think we have a right to know who are these actors, what are their motivations, and where are they taking us in our future, and why is it that these decisions are being made, and how is it that a Nazi was brought to the House of Commons in such a spectacular show of ridiculousness and an embarrassment for all Canadians everywhere, and of course no real apology given for this. Anyway, leave a comment in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think about all of this. If you disagree, let me know what you think. Put your comments in there, and we'll talk to you. We'll see you in the next one. Keep on trucking.